So before we take a short break, we have one more artist that's going to come to the stage. Has anyone here heard of Story Story Night? Oh yeah? Okay, great, great. I haven't had the pleasure of going yet, and now I really want to go because we have a wonderful artist here today by the name of Jessica Holmes. And, oh yes, yes, we can applaud. I like that. And from what I understand, she performs regularly at Story Story Night. Story Story Night takes place at the Rose Room, and I think the next installment of it is this upcoming Monday, October 24th at 7 p.m. at the Rose Room. And I heard several people come and show up, and it's a great time. I'll be out of town, so I can go. But yes, so we have Jessica Holmes here, and let's welcome her, if she's here. Oh, yeah.
Hello. So at Story Story Night, we tell true stories on a theme, live on stage and without notes, with usually featured storytellers who tell 10-minute stories, followed by an open story slam where we have 5-minute storytellers. And we've been doing this program for a year and a half now. And I've told 2 stories at this. And the last theme was Earth, Stories of Reaping What You Sow. I told a story at that theme. And Pat Hunter actually painted a landscape painting during all the featured storyteller paintings, which was pretty beautiful. But if you were at that show, I'm telling the same story, but I never felt that Earth was this story's theme. I always felt like this story's theme is fire, stories of getting burned. So I'm going to tell that same story, but I'm telling it as a fire story because that is this story's true nature. And instead of torturously writing it out like I did for Earth, I just have an outline. So I am going to tell you a story. So it is really a love story at heart, but it's that first love sort of story where it's really a lust story, you know? When I was 20, I met my first love, and he was also my first lover. And when I originally told this story at the last theme, I used their real names, which I don't think was really fair to these 2 men that are taking place in this story. So I figured out different names for them. And they're kind of like soap opera names. I'm really proud of them. So my first love's name is Dirk in this tale, which is a very handsome name. I've always been kind of attracted to the wild type kind of people, and Dirk was very much a bohemian. He had long hair and tan skin and tattoos that kind of signified everything, and he was so beautiful to me, and that, I don't know why, but I was a very innocent and idealistic person, and when I met him, he changed me somehow. Like, he lit me on fire. It was something I had never experienced before, and it was a burn. It was amazing. But I thought that feeling was a sign of something, was like a sign of a destiny, like I should be with this person forever, because obviously that this feeling, this burn that I felt signified something. So even after he started burning me and started sleeping with other people while we were dating, I didn't feel like I should leave him. And even after 2 years of this went by, I couldn't separate myself from this Dirk character. We would be together, and then one day he would just decide to leave, to take off, and to say join the Buffalo Field campaign, or go live in a tree somewhere to like save a redwood. It was all very romantic, but it was also very hard. So it was in this time period that I met the second character that you'll meet in this story, with a very sort of soap opera name. His name, I'm calling him Bronson, which I think is great. Dirk and Bronson. So I met Bronson at college. I was, at this time, after 2 years of this Dirk character, I was pretty depressed. But when I met Bronson, one of the first things that we did together is we drove out to the Leslie Gulch. I don't know if you guys have ever been there. It's on the border of Oregon and Idaho. It's this beautiful desert. It's this kind of volcanic landscape that looks like it's melting with all these amazing colors. So we drove out there, Bronson and I, and we climbed up to one of the kind of melting mushroom cap tops of this desert landscape, and we did mushrooms together and kind of watched the canyons phantasmagorically like melt around us, and it was so beautiful. And when we were done, Blake had these really long legs, and he just kind of took his daddy long legs down the canyon and opened all of his doors in his car and played that Bob Dylan song, "Shelter from the Storm." You know that one? Like, "'Twas in another lifetime, one of toil and blood, when darkness was a virtue and the road was full of mud. I came in from the wilderness, a creature void of form. Come in," she said, "I'll give you shelter from the storm." And that night we went down to one of the campsites at Leslie Gulch, and we built a big fire, and we were talking about kind of destiny, and the whole sky turned red, like really kind of just this bloody, rusty red. It was the weirdest thing. And we later found out that it was the Northern Lights, but I guess when the Northern Lights kind of make their way this far south, it kind of just turns this beautiful bloody red. So I kind of looked at that as a sign for something with Bronson and I didn't know what. Not necessarily romantic, but something like that we were meant to be together too, in a way. So when he asked me to go on this wilderness trip with him, I didn't really even think about it. I just was like, yes, take me out of here, out of this situation with Dirk, and let's go on a wild adventure of our own. So we decided to take this 7th-month backpacking trip throughout the entire West. We would start in the winter in the Southwest and kind of make our way up all the way to the Yukon eventually, like hitting all the wilderness areas that we could find on the way. So we just saved up. We quit college, we saved up, and one day in February we just left to go hike the desert. And the desert is a really strange and magical place. I think a lot of people look for fantasy and kind of mystery in a lot of man-made things, but nobody really goes to the desert to find it. And there's so much beautiful, mysterious landscapes. One of the first places we went was this dune in the Mojave Desert. So we backpacked up this white dune and kind of stayed on the side of the cliff. But if nobody had crossed that dune, when you would walk across it, the sand would rub together. It would just break off in big plates, and it would rub together, and it would make this amazing humming sound, like the whole earth was just humming. Like, it was so amazing. And then some places were they had no water sources, so we would have to pack the water on our back, and each gallon of water is 8 pounds. So if you're going to go out into the desert for any length of time, you would have to really carry so much weight on your back, like 100 pounds. And we would have to lean into the pack and kind of just slowly trudge our way across this landscape that seemed to have no end. You know, you would start in this desert, and if it was flat, you would see the horizon to horizon, and you could see the sun. You could see the sun traverse the sky and trudge all day long and come to the end of it and be no better. So, yeah. So this was my life. And I had come into this trip a little bit ill-prepared. I was a little bit idealistic and fantastical. And so I bought all of my stuff only a couple days before on one of these Sierra trading posts, like cheap websites where you get outdoor gear. But all of it was sort of misshapen, and like the shoes were too small and too tight, and the long underwear, like the crotch area, was in the back, and it was all I had, you know, but it was really uncomfortable. So at the end of a month of this, my feet, my toenails had all started to kind of curl up, and it was just too tight. I would bump them. Every time I bumped them, it would just kind of stub my toes. So they were purple and they were ridged and they were not coming back. They actually didn't come back for a couple of years after this trip. My thighs, which have always rubbed together delightfully, even after months and months of hiking every single day, it still rubbed together. So they would just sweat and become really chapped and really, really like fragile. So it was painful. I took my first shower after 2 months in the desert at a friend's house in Phoenix because we found out that to take a shower at a truck stop, if you weren't a trucker, cost $15, which we were living on the cheap. We never paid for anything. We avoided all regulations and backpacked at night just to do it. And so when I first took the shower for the first time, it took me 3 washes before it stopped running red with red earth. You know, you just get really dirty out there. And we had all these kind of Bronson and I had all these kind of grand ideals for what we wanted to get out of this trip. You know, we were like hopped up on John Krakauer's Into the Wild and Ed Abbey books, you know, like the Monkey Wrench Gang, where you're supposed to be like an environmental freedom fighter kind of person. And he was really, really cynical and really into these books. And but as we were both English majors when we met, but we realized that we had nothing left to talk about after a couple of months every day alone together in the desert walking. Except for the only thing that really happens to you every single day that's different are your bowel movements. So we talked, our conversation gradually demoralized into talking about the BMs every single day. Like when that person would go, Bronson would go off and come back and it would just be like, okay, so how big was it? What was the consistency? Like there was grand, like really, had amazing stuff happen with him, but oh, I love that. He still looks good. After all these years. So, I swear I'm almost over. So my middle fire really has to do with this one. See, this is why I didn't tell this in a more staid place for Earth. We had this one night where we were in the middle of this place where there was nothing but birds that flew over the desert and us. And one day he just came back. We had been talking about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. You know how she makes a